بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب زدني علما.
Now here what I'll do is I'll try to give a quick overview on the VM setup, what exactly I have, because most of the time when I do the sessions, probably I do have the multiple virtual setups. Now whenever you are setting up the labs, there are multiple options you can actually go with. Like I said, you can either use the EVNG or you can use the GNS3 tool, or you can use the PNet. PNet is again the same EVNG copied version of the thing. So you can either use any one of that, which is again the free source tool. You can try this one. But again, officially, I generally use the EVNG or the GNS3 options. So now the main thing here, what now when you're setting up these labs, the main challenge is whatever the virtual software you are running. So if you have been using the labs for CCNA, CCNP, it's like a normal, you just use the router switches. But once you jump into the advanced topics, it's really important that you understand that you need to be very well aware of these tools, especially the tools on how to simulate the devices. So in our case, we'll be doing with the firewalls, let's say, or FI load balancers or anything, or IBIS XR or SD-WAN labs based on Cisco or any other device. So whenever you go with the advanced options, you have to expertise any one tool. Of course, you can have multiple setups. So mostly at this point, you just have a 16 GB RAM with an i5 processor, which is something good enough to run 5 to 10 routers, 2 to 4 switches. You can run LAN, WAN. But once you start getting into advanced labs, like especially with Palo Alto, FortiGate, or any other firewalls, you can still manage with 16 GB RAM. The recommended is to have at least 32 GB RAM. But if you're going with the advanced devices like the Cisco FMC or Cisco firewalls, or even if you're going with SD-WAN labs or anything, you need to have at least 32 to 64 GB RAM. Okay, that's the first thing. So the first thing is the core hardware or the server or the PC. That's something you need to first consider. The PC must be having a minimum RAM capabilities with processing capabilities. That is the first thing you have to want it. So this is something kind of an investment you have to do on a dedicated server, one probably which will help you to expertise in the future. Like let's say for the next 5 years, you want to learn advanced technologies, you need to have this setup. Okay, mostly you can say most of the people use the laptops, which is something limited to 16 to 32 GB RAM. And again, most of the time there are virtual files do not support. Like in my laptop also, I have a good RAM, but again, the problem with this one is you can see the VMware workstation is not going to work. That is again another challenge. So there are few VM based applications do not work. So they have limitations. Okay, that's the first thing. Now, once you have the dedicated hardware, now what you can do is you can set up on this. You need to have the VMware running. So VMware, because most of the files, whether you're running the EVNG or the PNet or the GNS3, the backend they use a VM, the VMware. So either you can install the VMware workstation, which I used to do earlier, and you can integrate that VMware with your device, the laptop or the device, and you can run the labs. So the backend, you must have the VM integration. Okay, because at the backend in the VM, inside the VM, it runs some kind of a Linux program, the program which will be used for booting up the devices or simulating the devices. Okay, so that's the first thing. Now the next thing is we need to set up. We need to set up. So which means the next part is we need to upload the images. So we'll be uploading the images. These steps will vary. So depending upon what device you need to upload, you can always check the playlist on my channel. You'll find the options. So uploading the images. So in our case, we will be uploading the firewalls or the other things, whatever the things we are going to cover in the courses. Okay. So coming back to this one, because I don't want to get into the second step, I want to just explain my setup. Okay. Because That's going to be an option. So initially I used to have the server which I'm running is like 256 GB RAM, and with an Xeon processor. That's something. So you need to have that. Nowadays, you'll find most of the refurbished servers, which you can purchase at a very low cost. That is one kind of investment. And you can have this server. And on the server, you can run the server operating system, the VMware host. Or what I recommend is you can run directly the ESXi. Because earlier I used to run the server operating system, and on the top of it, I'm going to run the VMware workstation. Again, that's not going to work most of the time. It hangs in my labs because it runs on the operating system and then the VMware, and then we integrate that with the GNS3 or EVNG. That's going to slow down the process. So what I'm doing is I'm running this server directly on my ESXi here. You can see this is my ESXi, which is running. You can see the capabilities here, the storage and all. Now, on this, you can create multiple virtual machines. You can just go ahead and create multiple virtual machines as per the requirement. So how we do that, I'm not going to show you that because that's not really a part. I just want you to understand. So it's the same like operating system installation. You need to have that VMware ESXi file, and you boot with a pen drive, and you install with the basic options. That's how you do. Okay. Now, once you do this, now you can create a new VM, and that's what I generally do it from here. Now, from here, it's the same thing like what you do. Okay, the same process. Now, either you can go with if you're doing with a VMware, like if you go with a workstation, if you're not using the servers or if you're using your desktops or the laptops, you can go with this workstation where you can always create a new virtual machine, and you can run this virtual machine. And in the GM here, you can see this is something applicable, or you can open up the file, VMDK file. There is a default GNS3 or the EVNG files. So let me see if I can locate in my drive. So typically you'll find these files. You can see the files you can just download, and those EVNG files this is a EVNG full pack, this one. These are the OVA format files you can download and run this one. Okay, so there are two options, because as we will be doing the labs based on this, I want you to understand the setup, because sometimes you will try to simulate the same thing that you might be doing a different way. Okay, so two options, as I said, either you will be using the workstation, or you'll be using the ESXi, which is much more stable, especially when you are running on a server operating systems where you are dedicating one dedicated server with multiple VMs, which is more applicable in the real networks as well, like running some multiple virtual servers on a single host. Okay, so that's my host. So again, in this, you can see I have the EVNG already running here. Again, I'm not going to how to set up this EVNG. It's the same thing. You just go and import the file, and you'll see this EVNG is running here. That's my EVNG. This is a licensed EVNG version which I'm running. And additionally, you can do the same thing for the GNS3 VM as well. Now here you can also see, let me see if I powered on this GNS3 VM or not. You can see the GNS3 VM is also set up on this. Okay, so if this works out, I'll show you both the options as we move on. Now, as per my memory, I can run both at the same time. That's something possible. Hopefully, it works fine. Okay, so first part, I'll prefer EVNG initially. The main reason, it is more easier and flexible, even though it requires some licensing. Many people manage to do without license. I really don't know how they manage that, but I tried. But mostly when you're going with a licensed version, there's no obstructions, because mostly the licensed version will allow most of the advanced images to work fine without any issues. So what I'll do, I need to log into my EVNG. So my IP address, it is 192.168.15.194. So as you can see, the host, in my case, I'm getting this host 192.168.15.194. That's the IP. So that IP, we just log in the same way you do it inside there also. So I just log in. The default name, admin, and the Eve is a default password. You can change it during the installation process. And this is where I'll be accessing. So here, different folders for different labs, which I'll be using. Okay, so the same thing or the similar thing, you can do it for GNS3 as well. As you can see, the IP. These all IPs it gets from the DSCP. That is my Wi-Fi router, which is acting as a DSCP. So the same thing, if you want to get into the 15.179, that is the IP of the GNS3 VM. Again, you can also do it from here, but I generally prefer to use the normal GNS3, which is something I do because I've been using for a long time. But if you are new, you can also try those options. I generally do not find it comfortable. So that's the setup. So anytime I just power on my machines, you need to understand, and the backend, I'll be running multiple VMs, and I'll use some multiple different VMs for different labs. Like for security CCI, I have a different VM running loaded with all the images, and that's how it goes. Okay, so this is the backend hardware requirement or the hardware things, what is running in the backend.